Welcome back. As always, we appreciate your support of the channel. I would like to encourage you to like, comment, and subscribe. But now for this particular segment, we are going to take a look at an article that I found very, very fascinating. Now, the title of the article is Why Does Breaking Gender Norms Make Us Unhappy? So now we've been talking quite a bit about the masculine and the feminine role within the home. But now what we're going to do is we're going to extend the boundaries of our discussion from not just in the home, but also in the workplace. And so let's get into the article and see what we can find out. So as we mentioned, the article discusses why breaking gender norms does not make an individual happy. So we can see that the article was published in August of 2017. Now, let's get into some of the things that the article says. Now, the one point that I want to draw to your attention is right here. In this particular paragraph here, notice some of the key points from the paragraph. It mentions that well-being was lower for mothers and fathers who violated gendered expectations about the division of paid labor, and higher for parents who conform to these expectations. We observe a statistically significant and substantial difference in depressive symptoms between men and women in our study. Okay? So now that's the very first paragraph of that particular study. Now the study is, it takes place in the University of Illinois, and it's conducted by Karen Kramer. And so what she's saying is that what they noticed is that the men and women who adhere to societal norms, men going out and being breadwinners, and then women staying at home and doing the most important job of nurturing the children and taking care of the household affairs, she noticed that there were less symptoms of depression in these individuals. So that's a nice way to start out. But now the article goes on to help us to appreciate that they have a hypothesis about how this study will end up. Now, the hypothesis is that men and women suffer psychologically from the fact that their communities do not respect their decisions. And so these men and women that we're talking about are individuals who choose to go against the gender norms. You would have men who are stay-at-home fathers, and you would have the women of these households are going out and pursuing a career in the secular world. So now this study is based solely on whether or not societal norms place restrictions on individuals because of their gender. So now let's get back to the article. Let's go a little bit further, okay? So the next point that we'll be looking at is the result. It's mentioned right here in this paragraph. And so it's interesting to me the kind of result that they had. Notice what it says. It says that Kramer and her team, they surveyed 1,463 men and 1,769 women born between 1957 and 1965 who had submitted to psychological evaluations in 1991 and 1994. Now, notice this. Now, this is very telling. This is very telling. I think it's very noteworthy. It mentions there that they found that exiting the workforce to stay home with the kids did no harm to women's psychological well-being, but that doing so caused depressive symptoms in men. Further, they found that women who were the primary breadwinners in their families reported more symptoms of depression. As men made more money, their depressive symptoms evaporated. When women did the same, they spiraled into depression. Now, isn't that a very telling paragraph? More than 1,400 men and more than 1,700 women. And the findings were quite telling, as I mentioned. So on a psychological standpoint, when an individual exits the workforce in favor of staying at home, the article helps us to appreciate that it had a toll on the well-being of the husband or the father. It had a toll. He started to express depressive symptoms. He started to show fatigue and things of that sort. But it had no such effect on the mother or the woman of the household. When she exited the workforce, there was no such signs of depression in her. That's interesting. And then it goes on to help us to appreciate that as far as when a woman is the primary breadwinner. Now, you know our stance here on this particular platform. I feel that men should provide, protect, and teach. So that particular notion means that the man would absolutely be the breadwinner because, as we mentioned, our anatomy dictates that we are made to go out and secure resources for our family and bring them back so that our wives and our children don't have to bear the brunt of the world in that regard. But it mentions that when a woman is the primary breadwinner, then she started to show symptoms of depression. But now, in retrospect, we can see that would be something that would hold true because her role in the family is for emotional stability, to make sure that those in the family are able to cope with their emotions, that they're emotionally intelligent. And so her being thrust into the position of being the primary breadwinner, although many are successful and can accomplish this task, is draining. It's a situation that's very difficult for them. But then, on the other hand, when you look at when the man is the primary breadwinner and when he's beginning to be successful and lucrative, it say the depressive symptoms evaporate. But it mentions there, but when women did the same thing, when they made money, when they went further in their career, higher and higher and higher and higher, the article said that they spiraled into depression. So now, what does this study really say? Well, let's go back to the article and look at how they wrap it up. All right, so now in the article, let's see if we can find it. Okay. Now, the very last sentence in this particular paragraph says the results illustrate that a society that tells men they can only be fulfilled through work and tells women that they can only be fulfilled through childbearing impacts even men and women who believe they've evolved beyond that. That's a telling statement also. But now, out of all of the facts that have been brought to bear by Dr. Kramer, this is the only sentence in this whole report that I take issue with. Because a lot of individuals will tell you that the roles assigned to a man and a woman are societal constructs. They are things that are placed upon us as a result of society. But now, I take issue with that because if that was the case, then if it was only societal, then the woman, the anatomy of the woman and the anatomy of the man would not dictate otherwise. Because if you think about it, the amount of muscle that we have as men as compared to our female counterparts, it dictates that we as individuals can bear more strain from a physical nature. And what would that strain come from? It would come from work. It would come from going out and doing the best that we possibly could to provide for our families. Our bodies are built that way. Not only that, the way that we think. We've had many studies that dictate that we are, as men, more given and more interested in things, whereas our female counterparts are more interested in people, which makes sense. Because if we're more interested in things, then there's a certain scalability to the things that we create, to the things that we bring to bear. And so that scalability is something that can be used to benefit everyone. As a matter of fact, that's the very definition of being productive, bringing something to bear in your life that benefits those around you. That's part of being a man. It's part of protection and provision and teaching. Whereas, as we mentioned, women are more interested in people. And that's understood too, because that's what nurturing is all about. It's an interest in the welfare of the individuals around you. You want to make sure that they are prepared for life. You want to make sure that they have their emotions in check, because if you notice, the mothers among us, the females among us, they are very in touch with their emotions. And a lot of times, even though family heads, they make decisions, they consult their wives so that the way that they go about handling the decision is one that the whole family can get behind. She does that because she's in touch with the nature of people. She's a nurturer. And so she helps us to make decisions, and those decisions benefit everyone. So you see, I cannot agree with the fact that the norms placed on men and women are simply societal. There are too many other factors that are involved that really work inside of a family, which really cause a family to be united and productive, besides what the society thinks, besides what those on the outside may think. There are many other factors that are related to the topic that we're discussing that outweigh societal norms. But it is telling, nevertheless, that in the natural roles that men and women assume, if they choose to pick roles that fall outside of their gender, then it expresses itself in depression. So if the roles were not meant for specific genders, then that depression wouldn't be there, would it? Well, I just thought that this particular article was one that was very, very telling, and it really helps us to appreciate that regardless of what anyone may think, those gender norms are put in place because they work, they're effective. The whole of society is held together by the fact that there are certain things that men excel at, and there are certain things that women excel at. Neither one is above the other, but both are necessary in order to have strong families, strong communities, and a strong society. Well, those have been my thoughts. I hope you enjoyed the article. I certainly did. As we mentioned, we appreciate your continued support. We are working toward 4,000 subscribers. So once again, please like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, be easy.